The 20th century witnessed many events that changed the course of history, but few disasters had such a deep and lasting impact as the Chernobyl disaster. This tragic nuclear accident affected millions of people both directly and indirectly, leaving behind serious environmental, health, and social problems. Even though many years have passed since the explosion, Chernobyl continues to be remembered as a warning about the dangers of nuclear technology when safety standards are not followed. Studying this event helps people understand the importance of responsibility, careful planning, and international cooperation in preventing similar accidents in the future. The Chernobyl nuclear power plant was located near the city of Pripyat in what is now Ukraine. At the time of the disaster, Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union. The power station was built to produce electricity for homes, factories, and public services. Nuclear energy was considered an effective way to meet the growing demand for power because it could generate large amounts of electricity without burning fossil fuels. Many countries believed that nuclear technology would play an important role in their future development. However, this source of energy also required extremely high levels of safety and strict control. The accident happened during the early hours of April 26, 1986. Engineers were carrying out a safety test to examine how the reactor would perform under certain conditions. Unfortunately, several mistakes were made during the procedure. At the same time, weaknesses in the reactor's design made the situation even more dangerous. As a result, the reactor became unstable, leading to two powerful explosions. The explosions destroyed part of the building and released a huge amount of radioactive material into the atmosphere. Fires broke out, and radioactive particles were carried over large areas by the wind. The immediate effects of the disaster were devastating. Firefighters and plant workers rushed to the scene to control the fires and protect the surrounding area. Many of them had little understanding of the level of radiation they were facing. They worked bravely under extremely dangerous conditions, often without proper protective equipment. Some died within weeks because of severe radiation exposure, while others suffered from serious health problems later in life. Their courage is still remembered as an important part of the history of the disaster. One of the most dramatic consequences was the evacuation of Pripyat. The city was home to nearly 50,000 people, many of whom had no idea that a serious accident had taken place. At first, daily life continued almost as normal. Children played outside, families went to work, and people followed their usual routines. However, when the danger became clear, the authorities ordered everyone to leave. Residents were told to take only the most necessary belongings because they expected to return after a few days. Sadly, most of them never lived in their homes again. The city has remained almost empty ever since, with abandoned buildings, schools, and parks serving as reminders of the sudden evacuation. The environmental damage caused by the disaster was enormous. Radioactive materials contaminated forests, rivers, farmland, and wildlife across a wide region. Some areas became unsafe for human activity for many years. Plants and animals were also affected, although nature gradually began to recover in places where people no longer lived. Scientists have continued to study the region to understand how radiation influences ecosystems over long periods. Surprisingly, some animal populations have increased because human activity has almost disappeared from the exclusion zone. Even so, radioactive contamination remains a concern in certain locations. The disaster also had serious health consequences. People who were exposed to high levels of radiation faced an increased risk of several illnesses, including certain types of cancer. Children were especially vulnerable because radioactive iodine entered the food chain through contaminated milk and other agricultural products. Medical experts have spent decades researching the long-term effects of radiation exposure. Although not every illness can be directly connected to the accident, there is strong evidence that many people suffered because of the contamination. Psychological stress, fear, and uncertainty also affected thousands of families who had lost their homes and communities. Another important consequence was the economic cost. Cleaning up the damaged reactor required enormous financial resources. Thousands of workers, often called liquidators, took part in building protective structures around the destroyed reactor and removing radioactive materials. Governments spent billions of dollars on emergency response, healthcare, environmental protection, and the relocation of affected communities.
The accident placed a heavy burden on the Soviet economy and continued to require large investments long after the Soviet Union came to an end. Even today, maintaining the site remains an expensive responsibility.
The Chernobyl disaster also changed public opinion about nuclear energy. Before the accident, many people believed that nuclear power was completely safe if it was managed properly. After the explosion, concerns about nuclear safety grew in many countries. Some governments slowed down or canceled plans to build new nuclear power plants, while others introduced stricter safety regulations. Engineers carefully studied the causes of the disaster in order to improve reactor designs and reduce the risk of similar accidents. As a result, the event influenced energy policies around the world for many years. International cooperation became increasingly important after the disaster. Radioactive clouds crossed national borders, showing that environmental problems do not remain within one country. Governments shared scientific information, improved emergency warning systems, and worked together to strengthen nuclear safety standards. International organizations also played a key role in monitoring radiation levels and providing technical support. These efforts demonstrated that global cooperation is essential when dealing with disasters that affect large regions and many populations. In recent years, Chernobyl has become a place of scientific research as well as historical interest. Researchers continue to investigate the long-term effects of radiation on people, animals, and the environment. At the same time, carefully controlled tourism has developed in certain parts of the exclusion zone. Visitors travel there to see abandoned buildings, learn about the history of the accident, and better understand its consequences. Guided tours follow strict safety rules to minimize exposure to radiation. Although the area attracts many visitors, it remains a powerful reminder of the risks associated with nuclear accidents. The disaster has also influenced literature, documentaries, films, and television programs. These works have introduced the story of Chernobyl to new generations around the world. Some productions focus on the bravery of the emergency workers, while others examine the human suffering caused by the accident. They encourage audiences to think about responsibility, honesty, and the importance of making decisions based on scientific evidence. Although artistic works sometimes simplify certain events, they have helped keep public attention focused on this important chapter of history. One of the greatest lessons from Chernobyl is the importance of transparency. During the early stages of the accident, information was limited, and many people did not immediately understand the seriousness of the situation. Delays in sharing accurate information increased confusion and reduced public trust. Today, many experts believe that clear communication is essential during any emergency. People need reliable information so that they can make informed decisions and protect themselves and their families. The disaster also reminds us that advanced technology brings both benefits and responsibilities. Nuclear energy can produce large amounts of electricity and reduce dependence on fossil fuels, but it must be managed with extreme care. Proper training, regular inspections, modern equipment, and a strong culture of safety are necessary to reduce risks. Governments, engineers, scientists, and power plant operators all share the responsibility of ensuring that such technology is used wisely and safely. In conclusion, the Chernobyl disaster remains one of the most significant technological accidents in modern history. It caused tragic loss of life, forced thousands of people to leave their homes, damaged the environment, and changed attitudes towards nuclear energy across the world. Although valuable lessons have been learned since 1986, the event continues to remind humanity that safety, responsibility, and international cooperation should always come before short-term goals. By remembering what happened at Chernobyl, future generations can work towards creating safer technologies and reducing the likelihood of similar disasters.